Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Education and Clergy Development webinar. We're very thankful for having you join us for this very important topic about pornography, something that you think, are we really going to talk about that today? And yes, yes, we are. But I'm not going to talk about it all by myself. Today, I am joined by Covenant Eyes, an organization that you might have heard about. But they are bringing to us Rob Stoddard. He is joining us. So thank you, Rob, for being here today with us.
Oh, hi, Carla. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, and we've met before. I think we're going to have a great time talking. And those of you listening, you're going to enjoy hearing all that Rob has to say. This is going to be a great conversation. And I want to remind all of you listening in, as always, if this is your first time or you've been with us on our other webinars, this is a conversation. This isn't just a lecture or a time where we're just interviewing Rob. You are part of this conversation. So, as we are talking, if you have questions or comments, we want to hear from you. So, if you're listening live, there is a place where you can write in the comments, ask your questions at any time throughout this next hour. And we would love to ask those questions. Probably don't ask me. If you reach out, I will ask those questions of Rob. So, put those
Mhm.
questions in the chat and we will ask those anytime in the hour we have together. But before we get into this, let me introduce you guys to Rob and all that he brings to the table. Rob Stoddard serves as the Senior Church Outreach Specialist with Covenant Eyes. He's dedicated to equipping churches and organizations in the fight against pornography. With a deep passion for empowering churches to become healing churches, Rob inspires leaders to actively address the challenge and foster environments of restoration and hope. He is a frequent speaker. He is a frequent speaker at men's conferences, church leadership gatherings, and family workshops, where his insights bring both encouragement and practical solutions. Rob's background spans roles as a business leader, church lay leader, and a missionary to Asia, giving him a unique perspective on ministry and community impact. Married to his wife Jill for 41 years, Rob cherishes their three grown children and three grandchildren who are the joy of his life. So, thank you with that introduction, Rob. Welcome again.
Thank you. Sorry for the long introduction there.
No, I love it. And I love that you are bringing the business world, the church lay leader world, and the missionary world to this conversation because this topic really, we're going to be getting into touches everyone. And so, as you and I have talked, this is something you're passionate about, and you have reached out, you have talked to, and you have the experience in a lot of different circles and talking to. So, we're going to have a conversation that impacts a lot of different people.
I think so.
Uh, so, Rob, I want to kind of jump right in if that's okay with you. Um, as you know, we said, hey, we're going to talk about pornography. It is really easy to see. You turn on the television, you watch movie trailers, you look at billboards or advertisements. We are in an over-sexualized culture. It's everywhere. But I think it's not a secret to say the church is not immune to the struggles of this. How do you see this sexualized culture affecting the church?
Yeah, definitely is in so many different ways. I mean, like you said, it is everywhere around us in our culture. Our culture has really normalized all of these things now. And, at Covenant Eyes, we talk with so many people, whether it's ministry leaders or just everyday Christians in the pews. Everyone knows there's a huge pornography problem in this culture. We all see it. We all face it. But what we're really surprised at is how few people really understand the full extent of the problem, and especially in the church. I think because it's maybe such a taboo issue in the church that we don't often talk about it inside the church walls. And and so a lot of times we're not thinking about the ways that it's impacting the church. So if I could, I just want to share a little bit
Yeah.
about really the what we're facing with this issue. Um, so let me start out and give you some stats. These are from Barna. Barna is most people know who that organization is, but they did a large national survey back in 2016 that really helped define this issue, and then they redid those just last year or 2024 now. And so what they found is that 75% of Christian men and 40% of Christian women all struggle with pornography or confess that they struggle with pornography. Um, and those are just averages. Now, when you look at the individual age demographics, it certainly is affecting the younger folks much more than older, but it really spares no age demographic. It really affects everyone. And so in a church, it really is affecting every ministry area in our church, from youth to young adults to couples and married families, all the way up, singles, men, women, and even older folks. Um, but I really feel, especially for our youth, when you look at it, 90% of youth have been exposed to pornography by age 16. The average age of exposure is between 8 and 11 years old. So it really is, especially a struggle for the younger folks who grew up with that phone in their hand and instant access to all the things in social media. And so yeah, so and I can go into much more detail about other things it's affecting, but does any of those surprise you, any of those stats?
I don't know. Maybe the word surprise isn't, but 75% of males, and what did you say for women? 40?
40%.
40%. And I
Hmm.
think that is a surprising number, and maybe not just for me, but for those listening, because um, I think a lot of people think, oh, this is a male issue, right? But
Yeah.
and I've heard some other statistics, and I don't know if they're correct or if they're outdated. But like one in every six Google searches is a search for pornography or some type of content like that. So I know it's a
Mhm.
major issue, but I hear those stats for the culture at large, not statistics specific to Christians. So those are pretty large percentages for the church specifically. So that was a little bit surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. Most Christians are really surprised. The distance between secular numbers and the Christian numbers is very small,
Yeah.
unfortunately. For instance, it's only 78% of all men struggling with pornography. So a 3% difference.
Wow.
For women, it's 44% across the board. So really not much difference
No.
there. And the sad thing that we see so much, it affects so many different areas in the church, but I think first and foremost, it's always the relationships. It's the marriages um, in our relationships that are really struggling because that's really where pornography attacks. God designed us as sexual beings. He designed us to have intimacy with our spouses. He's designed us with desires for one another. And all of those things are good. They're great. But what happens is porn and a lot of these things just twist and distort reality in that. And so again, yeah, we see it in relationships. There's another stat out there. This was done by a legal association. They found that 60%, 56% of divorces in the US claim that it is one of the major issues is the pornography use of one of the spouses.
Wow.
So it's greatly affecting our relationships. But if you think about it beyond that, if they're if they're getting to the point of divorce, how many more relationships, families, marriages in our church are just struggling with this in silence?
Yeah.
We know, we hear so many people that come to us. This is a major, major issue. And especially for the spouse, when this is uncovered in the relationship, and it can go both ways, and it certainly does. Majority certainly still is the wife finding out that their husband is struggling. And when that happens, there's such damage that is done. I mean, the spouse is going to feel betrayed. They're going to feel angry, going to feel feelings of inadequacy. You know, am I not enough? Certainly, trust is completely broken in that marriage. And so, and quite often our churches just aren't ready to deal with all of that. We do an okay job of trying to help the person who's struggling, but we really sometimes don't understand the need to help the spouse through that. They're hurting and wounded just as much as the person who's struggling. And so there's a lot to be done, a lot more that can be done. But fortunately, there's some good resources out there, and I think churches are starting to realize that a little bit more.
Yeah. Let's talk about your mentioning of that 40% of Christian women and 44% of all women. Pornography is so often talked about as a male issue,
Mhm.
but it's not. Like, can you dig a little bit deeper into these, that it's a female issue too? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. And in that number, that 40% of Christians, 44% of all women, that's been growing steadily over the last 5 to 10 years and a little longer. Um, Certainly women aren't immune to this. The understanding for so long was that, well, women struggle in a different way, that it's much more on written material, it's much more around the romantic, and guys are much more visual. And that certainly, I think, has been true and probably still is true today. But unfortunately, with this younger generation growing up where the visual is so important. Everything in social media and TikTok and all of those, everything is on the visual. And our culture, like we've talked about, is so normalized the sexual images and what it means to be attractive and to find find relationships. All of that has taught this younger generation that that's what I need to do to find love, to be attractive, to have worth, is in those images. And so what we're seeing, especially among young demographics, is they are frequenting and watching much more of the hardcore pornography now, and so that's really been a change. But one other aspect of women struggling, and I'll go back to again the church, is for so long we've talked about this in the church only as a man's issue. We address it from the pulpit, we talk about it in men's groups, and we don't ever really acknowledge or haven't up to this point too much acknowledge that women struggle with this too. And when we don't do that, any woman who is sitting in the pew that does struggle with this and hears these things or hears it addressed as a man's issue, what we hear from them, it just doubles the shame. You know, they go through feelings of, gosh, am I struggling with a men's issue? I'm a weirdo, and certainly they feel like I've got to be the only one, only women that struggle with this. And a lot of Christian therapists and authors have found that to be true, that so many women feel like they have not come across another woman who's struggling with this. So they do feel like they are the only one. And um, it really just doubles that amount of shame that they're dealing with. And so I think for the church, it really is just a matter of beginning to understand that men and women both struggle with this, and to address it that way, to have resources for women's groups, yeah, and really begin to minister to women in this area. So I'll add one more thing too. It's also many women are coming out of traumas and even physical abuse as a child, much more than men, even though there are a lot of men that do. And there certainly is a direct correlation between those traumas and abuses that lead to struggles in this area. So all that to say, when women are using pornography often, it's really out of a really hurt area in their life, and so they do need so much more help. And so yeah, it's definitely a big issue.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the shame, and I'm just thinking about how much shame this already carries. So for women, it feels not that they would have extra shame, but there's just an that extra burden and to spiritualize it, how much Satan will use
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
to lie to a female and even a male and just continue to heap burning
Yeah.
coals of shame on a person.
Mm.
So this is a really tough topic. And then let's talk about families and how, not that there's an extra layer, but you have parents trying to figure out in
Mm.
2026, how do I deal with this? You shared a statistic of how young a child is when they're first exposed,
Mhm.
to something with pornography. And then you have screen time and social media and predators. Can you share more about what families are dealing with and how the church can help with that? So you've got men, you've got
Mm.
women, and now you've got families. Can you talk some more about that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a topic near and dear to my heart with especially now grandchildren.
Grandkids, yeah.
Yeah, it is so ridiculously difficult for a young person uh, to navigate this topic now. I mean, it's always been a struggle, but now, um, I talk to so many older people, younger than me or my age. You used to have to go out and find material and bring it home and go that way. Now, kids are have 24/7 access to the most vile and degrading and abusive material that they could ever find. And I tell parents all the time, or tell people, you don't have to go looking for it. It's looking for you. It's really tracking you down. If you're on any kind of social media, you just, you have to glance at an image, and you get an algorithm, and it
Yes.
begins to feed you. Um, but yeah, in the issue, I did mention the 8 to 11 years of age where they're first exposed. Also, the fact that now 50% of our youth are on the internet or have an internet presence by age 5. And you look at the cell phone issue between age 8 and 12, between 45 and 53% of our youth have a smartphone already. By age 17, that's 95%. And older than that are near 100%. They have access to the internet and all of this stuff. And so they're just living in a really tough world right now. So we talk with churches all the time. I do think the church can really step in and help in this area, help parents, because what we find is so many parents are really drowning in this. They don't know what to do. Often the kids are, more knowledgeable about technology than the parents, and so they don't know, or kids can fool them with a lot of things. And so it really makes it tough. And we've so those that have been parents, we understand it's very tough, difficult jobs, family life. It really is hard to stay up on some of these things. But there's a few things that we really specifically want to help the church be able to help parents with, and that is helping parents understand that they really need to engage in this topic soon or at a young age. Most parents wait till they're teenagers. Um, we really have to engage. Like I said, so many kids are online by age 5. We really have to help parents engage early. We have parents ask us, well, what's the right age to begin to talk about these issues? And we usually say, whatever you think that is, subtract about 3 years from it and begin then. Because kids are learning at such a quick pace now of things we didn't know until maybe junior high school. So parents need to really begin to talk. We recommend some resources. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and it's put out by Defend Young Minds is the ministry. But excuse me, a great resource to help parents begin that conversation of just helping kids understand that there are some things that are good, there's some things that are bad, and start to understand the godly intent behind our biblical sexuality. So having those conversations early and often, age appropriately, but then also being consistent with those days of one and done kind of conversations that a lot of us had, or maybe even no conversations, those are gone. Our parents need to be connected to, what our kids are doing with social media and the internet really all the time, and staying abreast of that. We need to be protecting the homes with the internet in our devices. We need to be aware of that. We have run into so many parents that are giving devices to kids with no concern or no time to set the parental controls on those or understand what's going on. When we talk with parents, they're floored to learn that like with apps, there are a lot of deceptive apps out there that kids can get a hold of, and they do know these things. Apps, I'll give you an example. There is a calculator app that kids can download. It's free. It looks like it operates just like a calculator. They can add things, subtract, but there's also a secret code that they can put in, and it opens a secret vault where they can store images and videos and all kinds of things. As a parent, you would never be able to find this unless you knew that that app did that. And there are dozens and dozens of these, and they're just offered on these platforms, Google, Apple, with no care in the world. And so there's just a lot of education. And that's another thing that parents really need to do is just stay educated on this. There's some great sites out there, Protect Young Minds, access.org are a couple of great parent sites. They're mostly all free resources. Um, and so, yeah, there's so many more things that we can help uh, parents deal with and be aware of. And if we do that as a church, that's going to really help as kids come forward in the church. We don't have to be dealing with so many of those issues in the church on Sunday mornings, if we're doing that in the home and taking care of those things. And so I could go on and on. There's so much more there around families and the things that they're facing, but needless to say, it is really ground zero for really helping people.
Well, let me ask you, like a follow-up. Is there a statistics or in your experience, a child exposed or a youth that, dabbles in this or gets into pornography a little bit? Is there statistics that show that it becomes more problematic in their adult years because they were exposed to that at an earlier age? Is there a connection there? Um, Obviously, we want to prevent it as parents no matter what, but is there a correlation between exposure at an early age and it becoming more of a problem as they go into adulthood?
Yes, it really is. There's actually a number of studies around that. And it really centers around because as young children, their brains are still developing, and they have what's called mirror neurons. It's why children can learn at such a faster pace than we do, or that slows down into our early mid 20s. But kids, when they're exposed to pornography, these things are so much more ingrained in their minds, and it really does carry through. That's why when you ask any adult, when was the first time you saw pornography, almost to a person, they can immediately remember the time where they were, and many people can remember the images that they first saw. And a lot of that's just because it burns into our memory so strongly at that age. And then there's just so many other studies that have been done. You know, kids at a young age, they really they have no idea what sex and all of these issues are. And so we see many people, young people who are exposed early, they're going to have a higher rate of sexual activity in their teenage years and into adulthood. Um, uh, just all kinds of self abuse and other issues that come out of that. And and screen time has been proven that it's really circumventing our brains and our development in that area. And so, yeah, I can't right now, spout a lot of the stats around that, but just Google a few searches on how their brains are developing and how they're getting stunted by screen time and by pornography and all of these issues. Yeah, it's a major issue and something that our parents really need to be aware of. And I'll add, that's why you see a lot more movements, especially on the state level, of limiting the age that kids can get into social media and trying to put age restrictions on pornography. Some states have had some success with that. In Australia, they have moved the age of getting into social media to 18. And so there's some real movement around that just because of all those stats. And we do need to do more for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's turn a little bit. So we've been talking about the people in our churches. If those listening are ministry leaders, let's turn it a little bit to the ministry leaders themselves. Those of us listening and those maybe will listen later. Um, there are pastors and leaders who struggle with pornography. That's an unfortunate reality. Can you share some more about that? Maybe some statistics or things that you've run into on the pastors and leaders that are struggling with this very thing.
Yeah, that really is such a hard topic because pastors and leaders, they're human too, and a lot of them have struggled as a youth, just like so many people have, and again, they carry some of those struggles into adulthood. As a pastor, and we've talked to so many pastors, there's there's so much shame around a pastor who struggles with this. They're expected to be leaders and shepherds and above this and helping others. And so for them to struggle, it just brings immense amount of shame. But we don't, I mean, really, we go about a month or two and we constantly hear of high level leaders who have moral failures in so many different areas. Almost always it stems back to a use with pornography at some point. Um, and those are the high profile cases that we hear, but every day, every week, every month across the country, there are ministry leaders that are found to be struggling with this, and many eventually it leads to other issues, acting out, adultery, and other things. To give you some stats, these again were from the Barna study, but they found that 67% of pastors reported a personal history with pornography. Um, Now, these stats, they also ask who is currently struggling, and that was 26% of pastors under 45 said they currently are struggling. 16% of pastors over 45 admitted to struggling. Now, again, I think these are probably one of the most underreported stats we have. Um, Barna also had another stat where 86% of pastors believe that porn is a common issue among their peers. So when our pastors know or feel like 86% of them feel like this is a struggle for the pulpit, and yet only 26 or 16% say they are currently struggling, we know it's an issue. We know there's a large struggle there. Another stat for pastors, 81% of pastors said that the church is not teaching enough around this issue. And so I think there's a good awareness from pastors and leaders that this is a major issue. There's just so many roadblocks in the way of really helping people who are stuck in this. And um, I would say just if there's somebody listening today or somebody that's watching this later that is struggling with this currently, you're not alone. You certainly aren't the only one. And there is hope. There is a lot of resources out there for healing. I know I've talked with Carla about some of the things you're doing as a denomination at the church level too, and maybe you can speak to that in a second. But there's some national ministries out there that do nothing but help uh, pastors and ministry leaders with this issue. And so I would say reach out today, find those resources, find somebody that you can confess that to. We've talked about the shame around this. Satan loves when we keep things, in the dark and where he can isolate us. And so just finding somebody to confess that to just brings us to the light and really takes Satan's power away from that, and you begin to heal from that. And so I'll turn it back to you. I mean, I know you have some thoughts and you've have some things that you want to add to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would echo that. I would just encourage anyone listening. Um, I can't guarantee the response of the person that will listen, but we are a denomination that believes in restoration and hope. And to be a person of humility and integrity and find a person in your district when we're a denomination with districts. I believe that every district leader would rather you as a ministry leader and as a pastor just say, "Hey, I've got this thing and I'm struggling." Because I believe that every district leader will say, "Okay, thank you. Now let's work towards some healing and get you the help that you need because there are resources and hope is not lost because God is not done with you." And so I've seen it. I've been a part of people that have said, "Hey, I feel like I want to be ordained. God's called me." And they've shared this struggle. And we've been able to walk with them. And before they have those hands laid on them, God has redeemed their story. And it's been beautiful. And I've known pastors that have shared in this struggle and they've gone through a process with their district leaders and they are on the other side. So I would just encourage pastors and ministry leaders listening that the shame is a lie from Satan.
Mhm.
And we are a denomination that believes in hope that God is not done with you. So, echoing those words of Rob, that the first step I think is probably the hardest is just to
Yeah.
to to be a person that is willing to share that with somebody else. And of course, you want it to be somebody that you trust because confidentiality is important, we understand, but I think that there are people in your district, in your circle, that want to help you. And we are a denomination that believes in restoration. So there's my soapbox, there's my 2 cents, but that's why we are talking about this today, because we would rather walk with you and see restoration than see another statistic of a ministry failure, of a moral failure, of Satan trying to tear apart a ministry, a family. Um, let's win this. So God wins. So Rob, that's my 2 cents on that.
That's wonderful. It is about grace and restoration. Certainly, there's always consequences of our sins,
Yeah.
but when our denominations really lean into that grace and restoration, then there's hope and there's healing. One thing, Carla, and maybe you can echo this too, but one thing we've always found with talking with so many pastors and churches and denominations is and I have a brother-in-law that just retired after 46 years in the pulpit. I know that it's really hard for pastors to really have a lot of accountability or a lot of just community for themselves. They're so busy ministering to everyone else, but they often don't have that inner circle where they can be honest and vulnerable and share those kinds of things. And I think that really often is one of the sources of problem or struggle in this area is just because our pastors don't have that support system set up enough. And so I just want to again throw that out. I'll encourage pastors, if you don't have that, find that, because it really is so key in this. We know in this whole issue of pornography and struggle in that it's about community. We can never do it alone. We can't face this alone. We need to be in community. We need to have people that we can talk with and share these things with. And so again, I just encourage you to find that if you don't have it. And so I just wanted to throw that two
No,
cents in there.
absolutely. Yes. And anytime that somebody has been in an official restoration or a non-official, an informal part of that has been that community, that accountability, not for holding a thumb under somebody under their thumb, but for the process of we're in this together and walking alongside. And John Wesley, who, Wesleyans, we like John Wesley. He believed in that coming together and asking some hard questions, not to be able to have the dirt on somebody, but to be able to have that fellowship and to know, hey, I'm going to ask you this hard question, and you're going to ask me that hard question, and together we're going to grow closer to Christ. So 100% accountability and community. And for a pastor that feels I'm a little far away from other pastors, I'm physically, geographically isolated, we have technology. There are other ways to find that community and accountability. So it's a challenge in a good way. That
Right.
we that's a good word from you, Rob. So thank you for that
Oh,
reminder.
good, good. Okay.
So we've done a lot of talking about this. So kind of dig a little bit deeper. How can church leaders, okay, so we've talked about how maybe the denomination can help pastors and help pastors can, in a way, help themselves, whether it's preventative care for themselves of not going into the spiral of pornography, or pastors finding themselves already in a struggle and getting themselves out. How can church leaders come alongside their congregation in this battle for purity? So they're fighting for their own
Mhm.
leadership purity, but now what would you say to pastors who want to come alongside their congregation?
Yeah, that thank you. This is
Because this is a
one of
battle.
my
This is
it is. It's a huge battle, and I think it's one that we're missing, quite frankly, as a church, as a big C church. The majority of our churches really struggle at talking about this issue and in addressing this issue in the church. I think for a variety of reasons. Some really feel like it's taboo and we shouldn't be talking about sex and pornography and all these terms. Don't want to bring these things up in the church. Others feel like, well, that's something that's just handled at home and that doesn't really concern us as much. And I've heard all kinds of reasons why, but when you get to the down to again the stats, I just read one where 80 that I forgot it already. Um, 86% of pastors feel like we're not teaching enough about this issue. Another stat that really kind of breaks my heart is that there's a stat that 84% of Christians who are struggling with porn say they have no one in their life to help them through this struggle. 84%. And yet, Barna found that in this last study that only 10% of churches in the US have any kind of ministry to help with this area. So we have this huge disconnect. Pastors, churches, we know it's a problem. We have strugglers who want and need help, and we have churches who are silent about this. And so that's an area that I think as Covenant Eyes, we're really honing in on and really trying to help. And I'll share some ministries we've put together to help with that. But uh, it really comes down to our churches need to be a place of refuge for this problem. If our churches aren't a place where people who are broken and hurting can get help, then where do they go? They're going to secular, they're going to friends, or in most cases, they're just not dealing with it. And so we have an opportunity to really be a healing church, to really address some of these issues. Um, and again, I know pastors, I know how difficult your jobs are and how much you have on your plate and the things you're doing. And so I'm not asking you to do more. I'm asking you to kind of work smarter in this area. There's a lot of just really good ideas on how to really help develop some ministry around this, get some of the laity to help in this area, and there's resources to help at different levels, but our churches need to raise the awareness of this issue. We need to start talking about it. Um, and we need to acknowledge that there's struggles, not just for men, but we've talked about for women and for families, because until we do, no one is going to come forward and get help. If the church is silent, very few are going to come forward and get help. And usually those are the ones that are just at rock bottom and just have to come and get help. But the minute we start talking about this issue and raise the awareness of it, we start to create a safe place for people to come forward, and we can develop safe processes around that on how to get people help, how to manage this in the church, how to be discreet about it, but have a safe place. And we've seen churches who have done this, who embrace this, and people are just flooding in. It's amazing just to see where maybe a church will do a testimony of someone who has struggled through this and been broken, but has found hope and restoration in that. And once they share that, you just see the hands start going up. Yeah, that's me too. That's me. I need that. And it just opens the floodgates. And so it really is just a matter of intentionally and consistently addressing this. And we don't have to, stand at the pulpit all the time and share this. Quite frankly, I think there's better ways to come at this problem. And there's so many nuances with it with couples and disclosure with that. But bottom line is, we really just have to help our churches be brave enough to step into this and to begin to do that. Um, so I'll stop there before I kind of get into maybe some of the resources we have that can help churches. But um, you probably have some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, well, you said the word brave, and that's what I've been thinking. Um, Not that, well, yeah, I think that in some ways it will require um, a few brave souls to, at least in our small tribe of the Wesleyan Church, maybe to start setting the example of, we are not going to shy away from this. Um, I have four children, and one of my children, he got a Bible for Christmas and, teenager, and opened the Bible and just happened to open it up. And the first book was the Song of Solomon. That there's a little description at the very beginning, and it's a student Bible, and the first words were, "This book is about sex." And
Mm.
he looked at me and he said, "Can the Bible say that?" And I was like, "Yes, the Bible can say that." And we had a conversation.
Mm.
But, for him, it was like, can Christians say that word? Can the church say that word? And we have made, you're right, this topic a little bit taboo. And of course, it needs to be done in a respectful way and not in a crass way. But as for some brave pastors and ministry leaders and lay people to say, "Hey, this is something worth talking about." I think even there, as you said, makes it safe for other people to
Mm.
talk about. At our church, a couple years ago, it was a lay person who had been personally impacted by this topic, asked if she could hold a kind of this little seminar on some things with kids with some information, and not a lot of people came. But she just gave some information on some things you've already
Mhm.
talked about, some social media and some platforms that were some of the dangers. And the people that came walked away saying, I had no idea. I was clueless. But it got people allowed people to have some conversations and things
Mhm.
started to grow a little bit. And so I think having people that are willing to say, and I think it's pastors to say, I'm willing to start having these conversations, will
Mhm.
give other people the permission to open up. It's a snowball effect, and I think it will take a little bit of time. And that's one of the reasons I invited you here, Rob,
Mhm.
is because I think as a denomination, while I have the opportunity to be leading these types of conversations, for the denomination to say this is a topic worth talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to announce this officially, we are partnering with Covenant Eyes as a denomination because this is such an important topic and such an important ministry. It's affecting 75% and 40% and children. And if you look at scripture, this is something that we've been dealing with in some form since the beginning, and it is continually dragging down people that were following God and get tripped up. And so we're trying to take a stand and do ministry to stop it from tripping people up. And um, unfortunately, we have had ministry leaders get tripped up and have to go through some official processes because of it. And so we want to say, no more. So, Rob, I would love, for you to talk more about that. We are officially partnering with Covenant Eyes, and churches are going to get to be part of this. So, um, we've got these kits, and can you just tell them more about what this is going to look like and this official partnership? We're not selling anything. So officially, I'm not selling you anything, those of you listening. This is because this topic is really important. And I want to be a brave person that says this is not a taboo conversation. This is worth having. So this is a safe place. So Rob, can you tell us more about what that partnership looks like?
Yeah, yeah. And thank you, Carla, for starting this because we always, the place we start is with leadership. It has to start there, just as you've said, and really getting all of your leaders educated, which hopefully this can start, but for them to really understand the issue and the depth of it and what it's causing. I didn't even mention, real quickly before I dive into the kits, there was a study done at the University of Oklahoma, a secular study, believe it or not, but they did study Christians who were struggling with pornography, and it was extensive. They studied 3,000 Christians who admitted to pornography use, and they studied them over 6 years. And what they found is that, and there are a number of findings, but the key ones were pornography does affect our walk. It hinders people from attending church. Over 60% of people said they read their Bible less because of the shame around pornography. Over 80% of those people said they would not serve in the church because of shame. And so, apart from all the personal issues and relational issues that are going on, it's a spiritual issue too. We all know that, but it's affecting our church. And so, yes, it does start certainly with the leaders understanding the topic and then beginning to understand how they can help the church in this area. So what we've done and what we're partnering with is we put together a program. We call it the Five Stones. It's kind of centered around the story of David and Goliath, where he picked up five smooth stones to slay Goliath. And so we've put together five of our kind of key resources for five key demographics in the church: something for men, for women, for couples, for families or parents, and then for leaders also. And this is a physical kit that we will actually send to churches, and we're going to send it to all of your churches. And it's designed to do two things. One, like I said, You will have on hand good, proven, and free resources that you can give to all of those demographics as needed as people come forward and need help, or certainly you can extend and initiate ministry for each of those different groups. So those resources are there so that you have weapons and resources at hand. The other side of the Five Stones kit is there are resources in there for you as a church and for leaders, mostly all digital resources, but they help you begin to, like I said, raise the awareness of this issue, to be able to talk about it, to initiate ministry. Things like a lot of these stats, a PowerPoint from Barna on a lot of these stats. There's a PowerPoint that you can take and give to your parents, how to protect the home around this issue and in other areas. There's a PowerPoint to give to men and one to women, and other resources that you can, in some cases, discreetly get resources out where people can find those. And we found that to be very important. So many people struggle with coming forward and talking to a pastor, a leader, and confessing these kinds of struggles. But if we get those resources out into the church in different areas in different ways, they can begin to interact with that, and that will get them started. A lot of these a lot of these resources are um, just initial ministries to get people started on this path, and so that can get them started. And then there's the next step with, taking it a little bit further. And so again, it really is, it's just a starter kit. We've put in there business size cards that you can give to men or to women, couples, families, to get them that resource easily, quickly. There's a QR code on there. There's some brochures to put out. There's even some stickers that you can put in discrete places. And then, like I said, those digital assets. You can also reorder any of that material, those cards or brochures and things, right off our website at no cost. We'll send those to you at no cost. And then there's also some planning help in that kit. There's a planning workbook for leaders that you can look at ministry around this area. You can look at what you've done, what's worked well. Kind of breaks it down by each demographic, and you can really begin to plan some ministry and steps that can help. And lastly, we are here to walk alongside. We have an entire team dedicated to the church, and you can contact me at any time at rob.stoddard@covenanteyes.com. And my phone number, all of that will be in the resources of this webinar. You can contact me and our team anytime, and we're there just to help think through things. We can share some best practices that we've seen other churches do, answer questions, and certainly come alongside. But it really is as simple as just giving you some tangible assets to begin to dive into this. Some churches have already, and I don't want to overlook that. There are many churches who are really dealing with this well and are far beyond, beginning. So maybe these can enhance what you're doing. Maybe you don't even need that, but they're certainly there, and we know that many churches do need to get started with that. And so that kit is designed just to help get started. And I will mention, these are all free resources, like we said, and there's nothing that anybody has to do to utilize these. Many of you know we also do make screen accountability software. We've done that for 26 years. That's really an area that we've been able to help with. Our software downloads on all a person's devices, keeps them accountable. It views what they're doing. The key is they're setting up accountability partners to help walk alongside in that. This issue isn't about technology. It's not about behavior. Our software is a good tool in the recovery of somebody struggling, but it's not the answer. We know this is a hard issue. It's a sin issue. Christ is the answer. Discipleship is the answer. But if our software tool can help, we've also offered special church pricing along with our Five Stones. We talked about pastors and staff struggling, we have a wonderful offer to staff where your staff can get a 4-year plan for just $100 that they can use for themselves and and their whole family. Normally, if you're wondering, it's $184 per year for an account. We're giving it to staff for 4 years for $100 total. And then we have some pricing programs for the congregation to also get discounts on that. And again, I'm going to be upfront. Certainly that's a sellable service we do. If it can help, that's great. Just wanted to make you aware of that. But the resources kit is there for you to use free of charge for you and all of your congregation. So, Carla, any questions from that, or did I leave out anything?
No, that was fantastic, Rob. Thank you. And I want to reiterate what he said. There's no expectation of purchasing anything. This is because I've asked multiple times, Wesleyan Church, I have asked, what's the catch? And this is a ministry that Covenant Eyes has said this is so important. This issue, as Rob has said, this impacts your walk with Christ. This impacts your relationships. This is such an important issue that they want to provide this ministry to churches. And so there is no cost for these resources that it may take a few weeks. We're not promising that you'll receive it
Mhm.
in a certain number of days, but every Wesleyan church they're going to be sending it to you. And um, we just we wanted to create this partnership because we think that this is an important ministry that you would have the resources available if God is touching your heart and you want to help one person or one family, one couple, or one person on your staff or yourself that needs assistance, needs support, needs a safe place for this area or your whole congregation. But I do want to encourage you. Rob hasn't asked me to do this, but if you feel that the additional tools that Covenant Eyes provides through that accountability software, if you feel that that might be beneficial, or you have questions about what Covenant Eyes provides or how they've come up with the materials that they have, reach out to Rob. That is his job. That's what he loves to
Mhm.
do. That's why he said, sure, put my email and phone number out there. He wants to help churches. He won't spam you, he won't overwhelm your email inbox, but if you reach out to him, he would love to help you. Even if it's just you as a ministry leader and you say, hey, I do have a struggle and I want to know what's out there to help me.
Mhm.
You could contact him and
Mhm.
he would point you in a direction. And I think he would even pray with you
Mhm.
as a person and a follower of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
So that's what this partnership is. It's all about helping and supporting the church and supporting the leaders. So, Rob, I just want to thank you for how you are representing Covenant Eyes and the ministry that they have. And like you said, 26 years Covenant Eyes have been,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yep.
I know this Five Stones is newer. I don't know how long you guys have,
Yeah, just a year. Now the resources in there have been around for many years, some of them, but the kit itself has only been about a year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to be part of it and thank you so much. So, Wesleyan Church, those of you listening, be expecting that. Call your other pastor friends, tell them if you get this thing in the mail, don't throw it out and be expecting it. We're really excited. Rob, I just want to thank you as we wrap this up for joining us today, for giving us information. Some people think statistics can be boring, but these were really
Mhm.
interesting, really helpful, and you've given us something to pray about and to consider. And my friends, lift each other up. Um, and if you have been personally impacted, please consider this an invitation to find a safe and trusted person and come forward because you are important and we want you to receive the hope that God has for you. So, Rob, thank you again for joining us today.
Carla, thank you. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it. And again, thank you for your leadership in this area.
we're very, very thankful to have you here. My friends, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time we have a webinar with education and clergy development. But until then, God bless and have a wonderful, wonderful day.